Good to see you. I not be seeing you. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, good. Welcome to Miri. Yeah, come slowly. All right. Come slowly here. Yeah.
Now to the entire community and the community chief. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Firstly?
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Very good.
All right, so you have to do some. Okay, you just hold on. Lorna, hold on for a while. Something we need to give you a traditional
Welcoming. Yeah. Training kan?
Not training, right?
Nah. Yeah. That is.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sarawak.
Nice to see you.
Padang pala Malaysia bulan ngemban Dodani atang Miri bulan ngemban Ibenlingang kalau pida bulan ngemban Kani tua dan lain Dohaman tuge duan musang jutan Pro pisai kana bara ida langit Kami tidak ditembara ni bulan ngemban Anak kakek jan kue tuge musang jutan Jauh salah mengalah musang jutan
Thank you, Mr. MC. Our honored keynote speaker and guest of honor, Professor Emeritus Dr. Lorna William. I don't know how to pronounce the middle because got number 7. I suppose our tongue cannot pronounce it, ya. Yang dihormati pemancar awan luhat dan istri, penghulu-penghulu, ketua-ketua masyarakat yang hadir, saudara kita Jenderal Yahya Urud yang who is our MC today, representing Kalio Conservation and Development Society, Reverend Elisha, who is our organizing chairman of this conference and also principal of MITS Miri. Not to forget yang dihormati Matan Tamkung Pahanding, like what Reverend Elisha said, a leading authority in Indigenous language, history, culture, and tradition. Members of MITS board and also some members of our BM General Council. Distinguished guests and our esteemed speakers, of course, led by Dr. Lorna. And according to the list that I have, Dr. Janet Stephen. Which one is Dr. Janet Stephen? This is here. Yeah. Okay. Who is associate professor from University in Sabah. Our friend Mr. Edwin Po from the Bible Society. Dr. Roslyn Wan, assistant professor Katin University. Ini Dr. Roslyn Wan ini saya punya classmate dulu nih ya. Yeah. When we are young, now suddenly we are old already. Yeah. And then Mr. Ricky Yakub bin Ganang, representing the Ludayah from all the way, from Sabah. Yeah, give him a big applause. Yeah. Miss Ilya Bit, representing the Tring. Oh yeah, she's here. Thank you for coming. Yeah. I think Dr. Lorna, even people like us in the room hardly hear about this word Tring, a very small tribe. Yeah. So Miss Ilya is doing a very good job to remind us that there is a tribe called Tring. And of course, Mr. Anderson Mutang Urud, can you stand up? Yeah. He is the author of the Klabit Dictionary. Wow. And father and son, the next speaker will be Mr. Agan Urud, the son. The father do the hard copy, the son do the soft copy online. Yeah. And then of course, this friend Komyok. Ini Penan ke Komyok? Komyok Jo Tungang, representing the Penan. Yeah, okay. Oh, he's there. Wow, you should stand in front here, yeah. And last but not least, Mr. Tingang Trang from Barrio, representing the Klabit. Yeah. And of course, all the we value you all, participants. I believe there's members of the press here. And of course, brothers and sisters in the Lord. A very good afternoon. Now, it is a great honor to welcome you at this important conference, which we entitle Borneo Indigenous Linguistics Conference 2025. In Sarawak alone, Dr. Lorna, there are 26 ethnic groups, 29 if we are to include the Chinese and the Malays. All those tribes have their own unique or distinct languages. Unfortunately, for some of those tribes, their language are in danger of being forgotten or even totally lost. Yet we acknowledge that every indigenous language is a gift from God. That's why we assign MTS Miri to organize this, knowing that languages is a gift from God. So today's function is to do with academic, to do with trying to preserve what God has given us. The language that God given to us shape our culture and gave each tribe their unique identity. Yeah. Like me, I'm a Kayan, my wife is Klabit. She cannot speak my language, I cannot speak her language initially, but over time we learn. We are gathered here today to celebrate the richness and diversity of indigenous language, recognizing their vital role in shaping the cultural identities and knowledge system of indigenous people. These languages are not merely means of communication, they are living testament to the history, tradition, and ancestral wisdom of communities around the world, including us on this Borneo Island. What we are doing today is in line with the goal of the United Nations, which declared that 2022 to 2032 is the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Now it's high time for us on this Borneo Island to join the world community to take seriously our ethnic languages. The purpose and goal of this conference are as follows. Number one, to create a platform to celebrate indigenous languages of Borneo, its literature and traditional song, while also offering a forum to raise awareness about the current status of the languages. At least this time today, we saw some books published already. Yeah. Number two, to ignite a wave of cultural resurgence with the inaugural launching of indigenous dictionaries. I see you have the Klabit dictionaries, you have the Lundaya dictionaries. I think Kayan Kenyah is already on the way. The Bible translation, children books, songs, all dedicated to nurturing and revitalizing the language for the generation to come. Number three, to enhance the effort of indigenous language revitalization through collaboration with linguists, like Dr. Lorna, grassroots activists, community leaders. That's why I'm very glad that Pemancanaan Luhut is here, and academic institution. Number 4, to promote awareness within Sarawak, especially the indigenous communities, about the importance of safeguarding and revitalizing indigenous languages in alignment with the UN International Decade of Indigenous Languages 2022 to 2032. Number 5, to offer a unique opportunity, like we are doing today, to engage with and learn from rich experiences of other indigenous communities, in this case in Canada. Yeah, as well as the advanced processes of language protection and revitalization underway at the University of Victoria. There is no better authority, expert, than what we have today in the person of Dr. Lorna. Can we give her a big applause? I have visited her home. I see her passion. I see her home is like a museum. Every time he go, he put all this memento on the bookshelf there. Yeah. This effort serves as a powerful example of ongoing progress in the preservation and renewal of indigenous languages. For your information, Kalio, the one of the organization that co-sponsored this organization called Kalio. Kalio in Klabit is that wild cattle. You know, Kalio conservation and development, which means that preserve the wild cattle, which means that preserve our language, because the cattle is already extinct. Yeah, so we don't want our language to follow the path of the wild cattle. Lastly, number 6, provide the opportunities for MTS faculty and students to organize public events that highlight and strengthen their ministry, revitalization, with a particular focus on revitalizing indigenous languages as part of their mission and academic endeavors, and to upgrade their profile. That is my message as the chairman of the board. Yeah, I must acknowledge and extend my sincere gratitude to MATS board and Kalio Conservation and Development Society, who jointly sponsored this conference, and the faculty and staff of MATS Miri campus that are willing to be the organizer for this conference. Special acknowledgement to all our esteemed speakers who travel from every corner of the country and the world actually, yeah, who flew from this part of the world and shared their passion. I noticed like Dr. Roslyn, and Temenggung Pahang, co-researcher with her, very passionate about research on our languages. And to all participants, all of you here, for your support and contribution. Last but not least, together let us make this conference fun-filled and fruitful. Let's make it as informal as possible. That's why tidak ada title yang amat berhormat, yang mulia, tidak. We just want it to be fun-filled like a family. Alright? Now, before I declare this conference as opening, open, I would like now to call upon Stanley to bring the gong, and all the speakers, can you come forward and stay behind? And Temenggung Pahang, Temenggung also come forward. Then we all will witness the traditional way of opening our conference, right? You stand there for a second, yeah? All right, come. Yeah. So let's witness and be honored by our guest of honor, all the way from Canada, to hit the gong for us. So after 3 count, then we have a big applause, yeah? Okay. 1, 2, 3. 2. With that, the opening ceremony is done and over. Thank you, everybody. Visitor.
Kukstum kawapa. Kukstum muskalap. Taktakamwi. Stakhalap aljauna. Kaan muhmin twala. One nosta. And squachicha. تلقول للوتولة شواش نشنكنوكا تطلع آمش تلقن الجونة تتميخ لبا. I want to thank you. I want to thank Mutang for making it possible for me to be here. I want to thank each of you. I introduced myself. My name that you couldn't say is Wanosa. The number 7 is a glottal stop. It cuts off the word. And so Wanosa. And my English name, Lorna Williams. It's in Canada, we can only use English or French names. We cannot register our traditional names still. They're working on changing it, but it continues to be that way. I said that I was really happy to come to be with you in this gathering, and especially a gathering that talks about our languages and our cultures, our knowledge systems, and our connections to our ancestors, to our descendants, and to the land. I introduced myself to the land on which we meet today, because that's our tradition, that the land hears us. And I'm here to talk about languages and to share with you what has happened in Canada and what we've been doing to address the needs of our ability to speak our languages. In Canada, there are more than 70 languages, 70, and 12 language families. And so the languages are very different. There are some languages that share commonalities, the ones in a family. And some of the languages are still strong in certain parts of the country. Other languages are very, very endangered. It's I also want to say how grateful I am to be here on your lands and to talk about this, because I visited here. I visited Kuching and Sabah, Kedah, Malacca, and Terengganu in 1972. It's a long time ago. And I'm so happy that I can tell you that I learned so much when I came in 1972 that helped me to do the work I do. Because when you live within colonialism, you don't notice it. You don't see it as clearly. It's only when you go and you see it from another point of view that you can understand it. And I want to tell you that in 1972, because I'm First Nations, I was wanting to know who the First Nations, the Indigenous people, were of these lands. I asked, and I was brought to the museum. And at the museum, I saw the Oran Asli in Malacca. And as I looked at the exhibit the Oran Asli were talked about in the same way that we were in Canada. We were almost extinct. We were uncivilized and not worth existing, is basically the message. And that struck me very deeply. And I was told that there were no more at that time, that they were gone. But I met the Oran Asli on their land, the land that they were brought to in the Cameron Highlands. I wasn't supposed to meet them, but my life has been very blessed. I was able to meet them, to see their community, and to learn that like my parents' time, my grandparents' time, here they were treated the same way. They had separate hospitals, they had separate schools, and they were tucked away. That's exactly the way we were treated in Canada. It helped me to understand. And so when I got back to Canada, I was able to bring that new understanding with me. And at that time, we were fighting to be able to teach our languages to our children in schools. We weren't able to. But because of what our people were doing for our rights, our right to exist, we began our schools there in 1974. And when I met with the people in our community to ask them, what do you want for your children? What do you want your children to learn in school? And they said, number one, our language is going. And we need our children to be able to speak our language in school. And they said, we need our children to know their connection to the land, to our lands. Because they're the ones who are going to be responsible for looking after the water, the animals, and the plants. And we need them to know how to do that. Because at that time, schools were designed to separate children from their parents. Schools were designed in Canada to separate children from the land. And that's not our way. And what I saw today with your greeting, your coming together, I can see community and the health and the importance and the strength of community. And that's something that we need to be able to continue to protect, because that's what keeps us strong. And so they said, community, our connection to the land, our languages. And so we began that work. Up until then, our language was an oral language. It wasn't written. And we had to develop a writing system for our language. And so we began to figure out how to do that. And you, in my name, when you saw it in written form, you saw a number 7. At that time, the number 7, which we decided to use, it means a glottal stop. It's when a word abruptly ends. And many of our words have that glottal stop. And but the glottal stop in the International Phonetic System is an unfinished question mark. And at that time, we were using typewriters. You probably don't remember them. And it was hard to change. And so we decided that we would use a 7. We thought we were so smart. To refer to the glottal stop. That's why in many of the words that we have, there's a number 7. But it was an interesting process to shift, to be able to see what happens when you shift a language from a strictly oral system to a literate system. There are many changes that happen. And there's a relationship with a language that shifts too when you make those changes. When I was looking at our language and looking at our people, what I realized was in an oral system, you have a memory, you have to develop a memory system that's very different from when you can write things down. Because writing things down is your memory. But in an oral system, you have to remember. You have to organize information and knowledge in a very different way. And so what did we use? We used songs, we used stories, repetition, and there were certain people in our community who were given the responsibility to remember certain chunks of knowledge. So that, for example, one of my uncles, his job was to take the memory of people who were about to pass away. He lifted information from them and then to pass it down to the next generation. And so there was a whole system of organization that people had living in an oral system. And when we developed the writing system, we could see that changes to our language occurred. Changes to relationships occurred. Changes to memory occurred. Changes to observation occurred. And it's important when you're thinking about your language, how those change and how that impacts who you are, how you are, and your language. In Canada, we have 2 official languages, English and French. And English and French gained their power in their home countries by standardizing their language. What I mean by that? What they did was they said, we're going to use one language. And they denied the existence of all the other languages on their lands. That's what standardization means in those terms. And so in order to have power, they said, this is going to be our language. None of the other languages matter. We're going to speak one language. And that's what they've continued. In Canada, it's 2 languages. But what we say is that our languages are related to the land. Our languages are the voices of the land. When the land changes, language changes. And so even in one language, different places have different sounds in their language. And it comes because of the connection to the land. And I want you to think about that when you think about your languages. How closely our languages are tied to the land, to the lands from which they emerged. It's important that you continue respecting those nuances, those complexities that are found in your language, and to be able to share them. At the University of Victoria, I designed a course based on our language, on terms in my language actually, of what it means to teach and to learn. And one of the terms is a word I used when I introduced myself, kamuhkasa, kamuhkasa. Kamuhkasa is a very special word, like many words in our language. And when I analyzed that word, when I to really understand what it means, kamuhkasa means it means when people come together, you work so that there's an energy flow that runs amongst the family, this community. And in order to achieve that, you do it through singing, you do it through sharing with one another, oftentimes telling jokes and laughing, and oftentimes eating together. But you have to find ways that bring people together. So people don't have to think about themselves anymore. They think about themselves as part of a family, of a gathering, of a gathering of people. And when I thought about that word, I realized that, yes, it's the energy flow, but there is a particular flow of that energy, and that's the energy that flows from our belly buttons. Because mukya, mu in my language is belly button. And I was thinking, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. That's where our togetherness comes, that flow of energy. When people come together to work together, to achieve something together, like you are gathering today. And so there are so many words in our languages, understandings in our languages, that helps us to really have an understanding of our thought systems. And those are extremely important for our communities, to keep our families strong, and to keep our relationships with the ancestors and our descendants, and to keep the relationship with the land. A year before the Pope passed away, he invited Indigenous people from 50 places around the world to meet at the Vatican. And what he wanted us to talk about was our knowledge about the land. Because he told us that he believed that it's indigenous knowledge that will help humans to reestablish a relationship with the earth that'll help to address all the damages we've done to the earth, of what we have to live with right now, climate change, the toxicity of our lands and waters. Many of our plants are suffering. Many of our animals are suffering. And so I want you to know that it's in your languages that you will find, that you can find that relationship that will keep us strong, and it will help our lands. It'll help the air we breathe, the water we drink. And so I think that finally, hopefully, in this decade of Indigenous languages, that our languages, our knowledge systems will finally have a place. And that's the work. That's the work that you're doing. That's the work I've been doing. I've seen our languages almost disappear. I remember in the early 70s hearing that in Canada there were languages that were termed to be extinct. And I remember hearing this and what it did to my heart to hear that a people's language was no more. All of the systems that have been created for knowledge are very confined to a very Western-oriented system. And it isn't, and it clashes with Indigenous systems. Because in Indigenous systems, our systems are related. There's a relationship. There are connections. Whereas in a Euro-Western system, they're separate. They're confined into pieces. And it's very difficult then for us to be able to maintain our languages, because our languages are so connected to our families, to our communities, to our land. And so it means then for us to be able to revive our languages, to revitalize our languages, to recover our languages, that we've also had to alter the school system from early childhood all the way through to university. And that's been our work. There are many ways that that the systems that are in place don't support our language work. And we need to be able to make those changes, those shifts, and work that we've been having to do. So changing systems means understanding how those systems don't work for us as Indigenous people. It's about 5 years ago, there was one of the communities that in the early 70s that I had been told was extinct. There was a group of young people, and that's why I'm so happy to see young people here. There were a group of young people who took the degrees that I had designed at the University of Victoria. A bachelor's degree in Indigenous language revitalization. And they were determined to bring their language back. And they found the leadership in their community who would support them. And that was key. And then they found some people who remembered their language as children. They carried it with them. And then they found at the university that a linguist had recorded their language. And these recordings were found in boxes in the basement of the university, of one of the buildings in the university. And two of the linguists at the university dug them up, dusted them off, and made them accessible and available to the community. And they worked together. And then there is an organization that was started in BC, the first one and the only one of its kind in Canada, called First Peoples Cultural Council, FPCC. And so I want you to look them up on the internet, FPCC. They do the language, they support the language work in BC. And they support all of the languages. And so what they do is they find the funding to be able to support the communities. They've created resources to help the communities to document their languages, to use technology for their languages. They've created programs for early childhood. And so they took the idea, for example, from the Maori. And the Maori began bringing communities back together, because they'd been separated, and so they were starting to bring them back together. And they started a child learning program, starting at babyhood. And so they would bring the old people together, the parents, and then babies and children, bring them together just to speak their language, to hear their language, and to be in family and community together. So learning language in that way. So First Peoples took that idea and readapted it for use in our communities. So there are many programs that they've designed and developed. They use, for example, the singing to be able to do this, the storytelling. So they've helped communities to recreate those. And so what they were able to do was to support this group of young people in their quest to recover their language. That language is now being taught in their community. It takes effort, it takes commitment, it takes the zeal of young people, it takes the knowledge and the wisdom of the old people. It requires leadership to step in and to lead the way to make things happen. It means allyship, people working together from the different institutions. And so finding and learning the ways of working together is extremely important. And as Indigenous people, that is already a part of who you are. It's already a part of what you do and how you go about things. So make those stronger. I share that story with you to know that when we're committed, and when we have a dream, we can make it happen. It's hard. It's hard when you're living in a system that has tried to destroy your language, tried to destroy your identity. It's hard to maintain, but you have strength. You have strength in your ability to come together and to make things happen. How much more time do I have? How much more time? Okay. So I wanted to share with you the partnerships that were important to continue a language. And to bring a language back to use. There's a community near the University of Victoria, and this community, Mount Currie, my community, was the second school, band-controlled school in Canada. This school was the third near the university where I'm working now. And they worked on their language, trying to keep it in use, but it wasn't working. And they asked me to come and meet with them. And one of the things that they were very concerned about was that their ceremonies were now being conducted in a neighboring language or in English, not in their language. And that was very upsetting. And so one of the projects that we created, and again, it was a partnership between the community, First Peoples Cultural Council, and the university. And we created a project for what we called speakers. And in our tradition, we have certain people within each of our language communities who are designated as the speakers. So they're the ones who conduct everything. And so we decided that we would offer a program for speakers, and so that they would learn this role and to be able to conduct it in their language. Because that role functions within their ceremonial system, and it functions within their community system. And so it's a very important role that was beginning to be eroded. And so these young people then studied their language, learned their language, but it was a very specific language for speakers. There was a whole group of young people that took this program. And I remember being invited to their community for a community event. And a group of these young people who had been learning to be speakers, I could see, took up their role, and they performed their role in their language. And I could see the entire community being lifted up, their spirits were lifted up. It made them so happy that these group of young people were taking up this role, and they were able to do it. That is extremely important when you're maintaining your language, is to find those important aspects of your language use and to make them strong. Okay, so you have to look, you have to be careful, but you have to look carefully to be able to find how your languages function within your families, within your communities, and to keep those functions strong. And I was really interested, for example, that the opening song was from probably a hymn. And in my community, that's what kept our language strong too. Were the hymns, even though they were coming from Christianity, but our people had used our language to be able to convey those. And those were strong. And so you have to find the places where your languages continue to have strength and to make sure that those are respected and honored and used. In this, so this community then began with speakers. And then a group of young people in this community took those degrees that I developed at UVic, a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in language revitalization. And they decided that they would start a language immersion program. They had no money. There's no support in Canada for Indigenous language immersion. But that didn't matter. They had the energy of young people. And they found a building that was no longer used. And they got together and they rebuilt this building. And they said, this is going to be our school. So they began a language immersion program from nursery school, kindergarten. And it's now, they've graduated last year, their first group of graduates from this language immersion program. They learn entirely in their language. English is a large part because that's a part of our country, but they learn in their language. So this is really remarkable that they've been able to achieve this. And again, they've achieved it because of commitment and because of the courage to dream, the courage to be able to say, we can. It's being able to find the partners, being able to find throughout their communities and the institutions. So to find the support. So in this decade of Indigenous languages, that is what I'm hoping will happen in all the member countries. And I know Malaysia is one of those countries. I'm hoping that together we can share, that we can help each other to do this work. We've learned a lot. We learned a lot in Canada from the Maori. But even in New Zealand, even though they've been able to do many things in that country with their language, it's always under threat. And so it's only by working together that we can keep each other strong and that we can learn from each other. And we learn from each other by sharing stories with one another and sharing what we know with one another. You know, it's been very difficult for us to share because oftentimes the sharing that comes through at universities or in large organizations, the knowledge systems to be shared are organized in a particular way. And so we need to find the systems of sharing that are respectful to our ways. And so I didn't use a PowerPoint. I don't use a paper because that's our system. And I want to thank you again for letting me share with you, for letting me come and be a part of your communities. And I just really, 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 it touches my heart. It, in a sense, it's almost bringing me full circle. You know, I learned so much from all of you when I came in 1972. And for me to be able now to come to share what I've learned, a little bit of what I've learned, I am so grateful. Kukshumkalap kika wishapa.
Just sorry. Actually, Lorna and I, we are neighbors in Canada. We often invite each other for dinner and meal and sitting out in the yard and for breakfast and all that. So Lorna also is my professor at the university. So I really thank Lorna. When I did my business.